The previous, Ichikawa was chosen as the user of Kaiju weapon number 6, which is referred to as the strongest and most dangerous. At first, Ogata had underestimated Ichikawa because of his young age, but because of Ichikawa's strong and unyielding determination to save Kafka's dream, in the end, Ichikawa was able to prove to Ogata that he was able to control the power of Kaiju number 6 in just 1 month. Well, what it looks like, keep watching this video until it's finished. The story continues with Iharu, who feels increasingly left behind by Ichikawa when he sees how great his colleagues' abilities are after becoming a user of Kaiju weapon number 6. Even though since he was in high school, Iharu was an invincible person, his brain could absorb everything he learned, and even his body continued to get stronger and more muscular every time he trained. Since then, Iharu has never seen any limitations in himself to continue to develop. So it makes his heart pounding because he wants to know how far he can get stronger. Mina Ashiro, Narumi, and even Isao Shinomiya. Iharu felt that he could definitely be equal to them. At least that's what he thought without ever feeling the slightest doubt. But after he realized that Ichikawa, who was originally a nobody but has now grown far beyond him, Iharu felt very upset because he had become a weakling. Even just to defeat the companion Kaiju, he had to attack many times. Here we see Iharu, who is dueling with one of the companion Kaiju, but Iharu cannot avoid the attack launched by the Kaiju, which leaves him badly exposed. Ogata, who saw it, then asked if they should also prepare to help Iharu. Until Tako answered, she was ready to come forward at any time. Finally, Iharu was asked not to push himself, because there are times when retreating is far more important than continuing to attack. Iharu, who heard it, felt how pitiful he was that he had to be asked to retreat because he was unable to face the Kaiju. He realized his fate had begun to change since joining the defense force, and suddenly his achievements stopped progressing. Even more so when he was confronted with truly talented people. Every day he seemed to be constantly reminded that he was not one of them, even though he had fought and continued to fight relentlessly. In reality, the gap between them was not shrinking but was getting bigger, not to mention that the real rival had even appeared from an invisible position. Shortly after Ichikawa made contact with the main Kaiju, which was located not far from Iharu, Ichikawa began to fully release the power of Kaiju number 6 to a level of 43%. When the main Kaiju saw Ichikawa, who was preparing to face him, the Kaiju quickly launched his attack on Ichikawa, but it turned out that Ichikawa could still avoid it easily. Ichikawa began to approach the Kaiju's hand and immediately froze it, so that it could not move, until after Ichikawa darted up to the Kaiju's hand to launch the next attack. Suddenly the Kaiju became painful because part of his body had been frozen by Ichikawa. Ichikawa, realizing that the thickness of the outer shell and the regeneration speed of the main Kaiju far exceeded that of the companion Kaiju, then Ichikawa again released his combat power to a level of 46%, and immediately prepared to launch his attack once again. Seeing that incident certainly made everyone wonder if Ichikawa had improved in the middle of the battle. Although Ichikawa did manage to get his shot off on the Kaiju, the fact that Ichikawa's attack still had no impact at all led to him releasing his power to 51% in order to launch a much stronger attack. One of the operational team members then asked Ichikawa if he was okay with that level of power, but even though Ichikawa replied that he was fine, and even his mind felt clearer than usual, Ogata, who seems to know something, thinks that this is a serious situation. It can be seen that the main Kaiju began to change forms to fight Ichikawa more seriously, until when Ichikawa ran on the wall while muttering, "If I were stronger than Hibino-senpai, and Iharu would not be injured." At that moment, the main Kaiju immediately gathered energy from his back to launch a laser shot at Ichikawa. Because Ichikawa had also concentrated energy in his legs to jump to avoid the attack, In the end, Ichikawa was still able to survive and immediately launched his counterattack on the kaiju with multiple ice shots. Not only that, Ichikawa also continued to launch other attacks until he managed to destroy the enemy's unique organs. Even though his blood pressure had increased and 6 of his muscles had also been torn, Ichikawa continued to fight beyond his limits, making one of the operational team members worried that Ichikawa's body would not survive. He asked if Ichikawa had lost control of himself due to the influence of Kaiju number 6, to which Ogata replied, "No, that is the real Ichikawa." Ogata explained that this happened because the user of the weapon number had synchronized with a special type of Kaiju cell and obtained a large amount of energy, which caused his brain activity, the number of neurotransmitters, and the speed of sending nerve signals to increase rapidly. As a result, the user's true nature and desires will come to the surface. So depending on the personality Ichikawa has, he may destroy himself. Although something like this sounds impossible and never happens during training, the fact is that this is the horror of the battlefield, where extreme physical and mental conditions can cause the unexpected. Plus, since this Kaiju weapon is made from a creature known as the strongest Kaiju in history, it is certain that the physical and mental burden that the user must bear will also be very much different. But if Ichikawa continues to show signs of losing control of himself, then Ogata will not allow him to use the weapon. We can also see that Ichikawa is starting to lose control of his mind, even though his whole body is in a lot of pain, but he can't stop. But Ichikawa still hasn't given up and needs even more strength to defeat his enemy. In the end, Ichikawa decides to freeze a 50-meter area around him, so that no one else is involved in his fight. Ogata, who saw it, was very surprised to find out that Ichikawa has a great sense of responsibility. With his current strength, Ichikawa managed to freeze 35% of the kaiju until the freezing speed could exceed the regeneration speed of his enemy. Unfortunately, Ichikawa's torn muscles also continued to grow on 16 parts of his body. He even had cracks and fractures in 4 places. Knowing that, Ogata immediately ordered Ichikawa to stop. From here on, Ogata would come forward to face the kaiju. While Tako was assigned to provide medical assistance to Ichikawa, but soon Ichikawa became frustrated because again, he failed to get stronger, so he wouldn't be able to save anyone. Suddenly, everyone was surprised by Iharu, who continued to break through the ice barrier covering the area while shouting Ichikawa's name. Ogata then tried to contact Iharu to ask what he wanted to do. Iharu begged Ogata to give a little more time for himself and Ichikawa. Ogata also warned Iharu to immediately retreat because it was very dangerous there. Even so, Iharu kept going forward and continued to break through every ice barrier in front of him regardless of Ogata's warning. Even so great was Iharu's determination to get to Ichikawa's place. Ogata was surprised when he saw Iharu, who was able to break through the ice barrier easily, even though his combat power release was only 24%. Iharu said, "Ichikawa is a great person. He is a straightforward person, hardworking, and also cares about his friends. In fact, he is so great that he makes me so jealous of him." While when Iharu almost reached Ichikawa's place, but there was still a bigger ice barrier, with full confidence, Iharu immediately used both hands to destroy the barrier while saying, "He will definitely complete his task, right, Ichikawa?" We can also see Iharu, who succeeded in destroying the ice barrier, so the trust he gave has also been conveyed to Ichikawa's mind. A moment later, after Ichikawa woke up in a condition carried by Iharu, Iharu explained to Ichikawa that they had been given an extension of time by Commander Ogata. Now the seniors were luring the main kaiju to divert it from the two of them, so since Iharu believed that Ichikawa would defeat the main kaiju and become the official user of Kaiju Battle Suit number 6, then Iharu will try to make the kaiju's core in a condition that allows it to be attacked. Then Ichikawa can finish it off with a long-range shot. Ichikawa never thought that Iharu would go this far for him, But Ichikawa was afraid that Iharu would be in danger if he did that. Iharu suddenly stopped and immediately hit his head with Ichikawa, then said, "Don't underestimate me. You always try to do everything by yourself. You are younger than me, so shut up and let me help you." Hearing that, Ichikawa finally realized that he had wrongly underestimated Iharu. Ichikawa said, "You are indeed great, Iharu. You can always make me look back at the front every time I feel scared. Then, well, I will leave it to you." Iharu, who heard that, immediately moved to face the main kaiju so that Ichikawa could attack the core when the opportunity arose, even though at this time Ichikawa's psychic condition had returned to normal. According to Ogata, it was still impossible for Ichikawa to return to fighting with his battered body. The only way Iharu had to expose the kaiju's core or make it in a state of almost exposure without Ichikawa's help. But since Iharu only had a combat power release of 24%, Ogata thought that it would also be impossible for Iharu. But who would have thought, right when Iharu launched his shot at the main kaiju's leg, it turned out that the attack power was even much stronger than usual. Ogata suspected that it was impossible for such a powerful attack to be produced from only 24% power release. So he asked the operational team to double-check how much Iharu's power release was. Suddenly everyone was very surprised because Iharu's actual power release was 41%. But strangely suddenly his strength dropped back to 22%, then suddenly rose again to 42% when Iharu jumped to avoid the kaiju's attack. With his unstable condition that has made Iharu able to become an invincible figure, Iharu realizes that he is not a talented person and not someone who will become a hero figure like Isao, Ichikawa, and others. He is sure that along his life path there will always be a wall that will limit him from pursuing them. But even so, Iharu never gave up on destroying that wall and continued to destroy it, until one day he would also arrive at their place. It looks like Iharu is back to launching his attacks on the main kaiju with multiple shots, not even caring that he is overheated and reached his limit. At the end of the battle, Iharu still went beyond his limit to launch a follow-up attack on the frozen part of the kaiju's body, until the attack succeeded in exposing the kaiju's core, and Iharu immediately shouted at Ichikawa to finish it off immediately. From a distance, Ichikawa aimed at the kaiju's core, then launched a shot that was able to penetrate its thick body. Seeing that incident, Ogata became very surprised and recalled his memories with Hikari. At that time, Hikari told him that his body cells were declared compatible with Kaiju weapon number 4. Hikari seemed excited to use the Kaiju weapon because she would be able to defeat a much stronger Kaiju, and could also help a little to reduce the damage to the region due to the battle. But when Ogata was asked if he thought Hikari would be able to do it, then Ogata replied, "Of course, you can." Unfortunately, it became a regret for Ogata. Ogata wondered if at that time he could see the future and strongly oppose Hikari's decision, whether Hikari would now be alive and smiling when she saw the greatness of the new generation today. A moment later, it was reported that the life sign of the main kaiju had disappeared after Ichikawa managed to defeat it. While Iharu and Ichikawa seemed very happy to celebrate their success. On the other hand, we can also see Ogata, who seemed to be moved by the victory, as he said, "It's good. I couldn't stop him and I couldn't fight by his side at the crucial moment. But you can definitely change the future to what you want. Youth is fun." After that, Ogata contacted Ichikawa to tell him that Ichikawa had passed as Kaiju weapon user number 6, and that he would entrust part of the country's future to Ichikawa. Although Tako asked if Ogata was sure of his decision, because he thought Ogata would warn Ichikawa about the dangers of his sense of responsibility, to the point that he tended to neglect personal safety. According to Ogata, it was unnecessary, because Iharu had taken his place to convey it to Ichikawa.